Governor Tim Walz just cannot escape scandal. This week, Vance Boelter pleaded guilty, and he received 2 consecutive life sentences plus 40 years. And buried in his case file is a manifesto that has 70 politicians' names on it, including Governor Tim Walz.
In midday, Vance Boelter, just moments ago, has just agreed to change his plea to guilty in the federal case against him. Thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Folger.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Leah McClain. Boelter is charged with shooting 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses at their homes in Champlin and Brooklyn Park. This happened almost exactly a year ago.
Now, in today's show, we're going to talk about Boelter taking the plea, the death penalty coming off the table, and the U.S. attorney and his explanation of why, right on camera. His own manifesto named Tim Walz and Melissa Hortman. She's the woman who he murdered. She's the one who cast the deciding vote to cut health care for illegal immigrants 4 days before she was killed. Now, please like this video and share it, and leave a comment down below. And please don't forget to subscribe to the J.R. Majewski Show.
Leopold, the death penalty may be off the table now for Vance Boelter, but by pleading guilty here today, Boelter will never be a free man again. This plea agreement dealing Boelter not 1, but 2 life sentences, plus another 40 years in prison. Prosecutors saying that Boelter has agreed to plead guilty to all 6 of the federal counts that are against him. In court today, he finally admitted out loud to stalking the Hortman and the Hoffman families for months leading up to those attacks just last June. Boelter also going on to admit in court that he impersonated a police officer when he showed up at Senator John Hoffman's house in the middle of the night, for he says he then shot Hoffman and his wife Yvette several times at close range. Miraculously, though, we know both the Hoffmans did survive those gunshot wounds. We then know that Boelter tried to go to 2 other lawmakers' homes, but they were not there. So then we know that Boelter admitted he then made his way to the Hortman home, again pretending to be a police officer, before he says he then shot and killed Melissa, Mark, and their dog Gilbert. Now all that leaves for at least this federal case is sentencing. We know that the judge and the prosecution say that they want that expedited. It could happen as early as the end of July, Leon Paul.
6 counts, guilty on all of them. Stalking, murder, firearms. That's the headline. And folks, what we have to understand about a federal plea like this is that Boelter didn't get a deal because the case about him was weak. He got this deal because he agreed to the maximum possible time on every single count. 2 life sentences run back to back, plus 40 years on top of that. There's no scenario where this guy gets out of a federal prison to see the light of day ever again. None.
The murders of Speaker of the House Melissa Hortman and Mark Hortman, shooting of Senator John Hoffman and Yvette Hoffman, and the attempted shooting of Hope Hoffman are among the worst political violence crimes that we have seen. Today, the United States achieved the admissions and the agreement necessary for the perpetrator of those crimes to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Authorities say 58-year-old Vance Boelter was arrested last year after the largest manhunt in Minnesota history for allegedly killing House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark.
Boelter is also accused of wounding State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. They were both present in court today.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has been following the very latest for us and joins us now. So, Maggie, authorities are saying that Boelter admitted to dressing like a police officer when he went to those lawmakers' homes. He wore body armor and a, quote, hyper-realistic silicone mask during the attacks.
Now, did you hear what he just admitted? He was stalking these families for months, dressing up as a cop, going into multiple homes. This is not a man who lost control. No. This is a man who built a plan, and he executed it, and then ran from it for 2 days while half of Minnesota and their law enforcement hunted him down. That manhunt was the largest in state's history. Think about that. The largest manhunt in Minnesota was for a man who specifically targeted Democratic lawmakers because of what they represented to him. If the politics on this were flipped, you would not be able to escape the wall-to-wall coverage. We'd still be hearing about it today.
As a manhunt to find and arrest Boelter dragged on for more than 40 hours. Full disclosure here, the FBI, law enforcement, they also, I know, have access to your video. The video that shows some of his actions before and even after the shootings.
He answered yes to the judge when he was asked if he indeed put the gun to the representative's head before he fired.
Now that doorbell footage right there, that's the moment Minnesota lost a Speaker of their House, her husband, and their dog, Gilbert. He put a gun to Melissa Hortman's head, he pulled the trigger, and family members in that courtroom this week heard him confirm it under oath. And people cried out loud when he said it. Now, I want to sit with that for a second before we move forward, because what comes next requires you to hold two things in your head at the same time. First, this man is a monster, and the plea deal ends his ability to hurt anyone ever again. Two, the case around him still has loose threads that have gotten buried, and burying them doesn't give anyone a service, especially to the Hoffmans, or the truth.
Table. We understood there's some, with what happened with the Mangione case, that whether that stalking murder combination was in fact a capital punishment type of charge in the end. How did your office come down on it? How did the Attorney General make this final decision?
Yeah, and I know there was some confusing news reports out over the weekend, and perhaps I can eliminate that confusion. First of all, I think it's now out as a public document, the Attorney General's direction in this case that he issued last Friday. And I will tell you, the Attorney General and I see this thing the exact same way and are in complete agreement on it. The direction that we had was that we will not seek the death penalty provided Mr. Boelter enters into the plea agreement that you all saw him enter into today. And that was the only circumstance under which the death penalty was off the table. We do believe, we continue to believe, this case was charged right. You raised, Paul, the question of the Mangione case and some murkiness that the fallout from that case may create around death penalty law and some of the statutes that relate to it. But what I can tell you is that we certainly believe that this case as charged, which had important differences from the Mangione charges, that this case as charged was certainly death penalty eligible, and we would have prevailed in that ultimately in the courts. But the truth is, when you have a defendant that is prepared to plead guilty, take consecutive life terms plus, to ensure that he never sees freedom again in his entire life, that was an opportunity that we just could not pass up.
Now, the U.S. Attorney just told everyone they believed they'd win a death penalty case. They believed it. And they took the deal anyway, because a guaranteed life sentence with no appeal is worth more than them litigating this with an uncertain outcome. I'm not going to second guess that call. I mean, prosecutors make trades like this all the time. And from a pure resource standpoint, it can be defended. But here's what this decision also does. It closes the book. I mean, no trial means no cross-examination. No cross-examination means nobody under oath gets asked the harder questions about what else was going on here. The plea protects the public from Boelter, but it does not answer the questions that everyone deserves answers to. There was 4 days before Melissa Hortman was murdered. She cast the deciding vote number 68, actually. And it was to strip health care coverage from undocumented adult immigrants in Minnesota. The bill passed 68 to 65. And she was the only Democrat who voted yes. She said it herself. She said that she knew people would try to hurt her because of it. She cried casting the vote. Her own caucus was furious with her. She said she had to do what leaders do. Step up and get the job done. And 4 days later, she is dead. I'm not telling you those two facts are necessarily connected. I'm telling you a sitting speaker breaking from her own party on probably the single most radioactive vote of the session and then being murdered days later is the kind of thing that gets a full investigative treatment in any other circumstance. But here it got a paragraph. And when they searched Boelter's vehicle, they found a manifesto. The list, 70 names, politicians. Governor Tim Walz was on that list. Now, you have to think about what that actually means. This is not Boelter accusing Walz of something in a rambling letter. It was a target list, and the sitting governor of Minnesota is on it, right alongside the people Boelter actually went after. That detail got mentioned once, and then they moved forward to the letter. And the letter got the delusional label, and that label did a lot of work because it covered the letter, and it covered the manifesto, and it covered the questions about why a man with this kind of access and this kind of plan had Walz's name anywhere in his materials at all. Now, here's the letter itself, addressed to FBI Director Kash Patel.
Prosecutors say when Boelter was arrested near his home in Green Isle, they found a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel in his car. In the letter, Boelter includes a confession and several outrageous claims, like he was secretly trained by the U.S. military, Governor Tim Walz wanted him to kill U.S. Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, and that people threatened his family if he didn't go along with the plan, all of which prosecutors call delusional.
On Boelter's own handwriting, he claims Governor Walz approached him and wanted him to kill 2 U.S. senators, Amy Klobuchar and Smith, because in his words, Walz wanted to be the senator. A U.S. attorney calls this delusional, that it had no foundation in reality.
Was it a delusion that he believes, or was it a delusion that is designed as an effort to misdirect our investigation or to frankly excuse his crimes? Well, that's a good question. It certainly seems designed to excuse his crimes.
Now, that may be correct, but you have to ask yourself, if a man assassinates Democratic officials, leaves a target list with a Republican governor's name on it, and a letter claiming that governor ordered different killings, does the speed of delusional feel right on you? Would it feel right if the names were reversed? Again, I'm not saying Walz did anything. I'm saying the standard for investigate this fully should not depend on whose name is on any given document. I think there's more to come out of this. And, you know, with everything that's going on in Minnesota with the fraud and all that, I don't think Tim Walz is done, and I don't think we're done hearing about this guy. So, look, do you think the death penalty should have been something that stayed on the table? Or was the deal the right thing? What do you think about Boelter's manifesto with the names on it? Do you think that deserves more attention? And, you know, Melissa Hortman cast the deciding vote against her own party right before she got murdered. Do you think that connection should have gotten more national coverage? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Vance Boelter pleads guilty, and the manifesto with Tim Walz's name on it is hidden. American justice.